A false dichotomy or a false dilemma is a misapplication of the process of elimination. We have two options and we can eliminate one, so the one remaining must be correct, right? A particular whole number is even or odd. It's not even, therefore it's odd. This works. This does not. The police have arrested two suspects for a particular crime. One of them has an airtight alibi, therefore the other one must be guilty. No, we haven't ruled out the possibility that there's a third person who could have done it, so this is a perfect example of a false dichotomy. Just as there are false dichotomies, there are false trichotomies, and, well, false encotomies. The reasoning is the same in all cases. Premise 1, a list of options including A, such as A or B or C. Premise 2, eliminate all options except A, not B or C. Conclusion, therefore A. This is perfectly valid, but to be sound, both premises must be true. In particular, the list in premise 1 must be exhaustive, or the premise must be rejected. It's not enough to list all known options. In order for the conclusion to follow, the list must include all logically possible options. A whole number is even or odd. There is no third option. A real number is less than, equal to, or greater than 0. There is no fourth option. In these cases, we are not simply unaware of any other alternatives. There cannot be any, and we know this because it follows from how those sets of numbers are defined. The problem comes when we can't list all possible alternatives, or when we conveniently forget ones that we can't eliminate. For example, let's look at the fine-tuning argument for the existence of God. First, let's grant that the universe is finely tuned under the definition of fine-tuning used in this argument. Whether the universe is finely tuned or not is a separate issue, so let's ignore it for our current purposes. Premise 1. The fine-tuning of the universe is due to chance, physical necessity, or design. Premise 2. It is not due to chance or physical necessity. Conclusion, therefore it is due to design. The issue I want to address here is that chance, physical necessity, and design do not form an exhaustive list. We can add statistical necessity right away, which would be the case if there are multiple universes with all possible sets of natural laws represented. But even if I couldn't think of a fourth alternative, I would still have to reject the premise because it would still be logically possible for an unknown fourth alternative to exist. Chance or not chance would be an exhaustive list. Chance, physical necessity, design, or other would also be an exhaustive list. As it stands, however, premise 1 must be rejected. This fallacy is extremely common in political discussions. Anyone who agrees or disagrees with candidate party A on one issue must do so on every issue. You are either completely with A or completely against A and completely with A's most extreme opponent. This, of course, ignores the fact that it's perfectly possible to believe that A has some good points and some bad points, and that the political spectrum is just that, a spectrum. There are more than two possible positions. Another common false dichotomy is thinking that if a person is unconvinced that statement A is true, then he must be convinced that A is false. While it's true that A is either true or false, that is, either A or not A is true, one does not have to be convinced one way or the other. If I have not been convinced that either one is the case, then I will not believe A and I will not believe not A, even though I know that one of them must be true. The problem is obviously that I can't determine which one is the true one. Atheists are unconvinced that the claim "a God exists" is true, and are therefore often expected to defend the position that no God in fact exists. I do not believe that a God exists does not have to mean I believe that no God exists, because it's also possible to be unconvinced that a God exists because the existence of a God has not been demonstrated. I am not required by the rules of logic to be able to justify the acceptance of the negation of a statement as true in order to be unconvinced that the statement itself is true. Similarly, the number of marbles in a jar is even or odd. Not having any idea of which is the case, I do not believe that the number is even, nor do I believe that the number is odd. I believe that the number is even, and I believe that the number is odd is not an exhaustive list of positions I can hold on this issue. We must also add I am not convinced either way. Thus, the fact that I do not believe that the number is even does not imply that I must believe that the number is odd. Winston Wu defends jumping to the conclusion that an event has a supernatural explanation by saying, quote, "What skeptics don't understand is, if the possible mundane explanations don't fit the facts or are too improbable to be believed, then they can and should be ruled out," unquote. I'd argue that improbable mundane explanations are still always more probable than a supernatural one, but the problem that I really want to address here is that the list of all possible mundane explanations is almost always unavailable. What Wu is forgetting, or deliberately ignoring, is that ruling out all mundane explanations that you can think of does not just leave you with the supernatural. It also leaves you with every mundane explanation you can't think of. Don't be like Wu. Instead, stay logical.